What's up, y'all? Welcome to Online Six-ish. Guys, I'm sorry that we canceled service, but I didn't want to drag any of y'all in here and we get stuck in a tornado or something. So I'm glad y'all are watching online, and I got a really good message for us today. And you're about to watch the greatest battle take place on the screen, so pay attention to that real quick.
Send in the goats! Levi Thangyle! Baruch Katan! Hey, how do you like that? The old twiddly whirlies? Hey, you buggers! Let's go! Oh, come on! More! More! With the hordes of hell and the farmers! Fight to the death! Back
Okay, so the person who can guess what movie that is off of, it has to be the movie and which episode it is. If you can guess that first person to comment the name gets this bag of Tasty Nerds gummy clusters, because that is possibly one of the greatest movies ever. And it really tells the story of the passage we're going to do today. Okay? We're starting a new series, and it's called Warrior. All right, we're going to be going through Ephesians chapter 6. So, what you've seen was the dwarves and you've seen the elves. All right, they're fighting each other. They're fighting against flesh and blood. All right, and then in the middle of their fight, out of nowhere, you see these orcs come up. Okay, we're going to call them the devil's schemes. All right, so the elves and the dwarves are fighting against flesh and blood. And out of nowhere, here comes the devil's schemes, and they work together and they fight the devil's schemes. Okay, and that is exactly what we're going to be reading today. And I'm going to show you what I think about whenever I hear the word warrior. Okay, so first I think of Captain America. That's a warrior right there. Okay, then I think of Obi-Wan Kenobi. That guy is a beast. He's all around a great fighter. He's a great warrior. He's a great leader. He's just a stand-up dude. And then SEAL Team 6. Okay, those guys are warriors, every single one of them. And they're out there defending our country so that we can be free. And I'm thankful for those guys. So whenever those images come to my mind, I think of a warrior. But if I'm being honest, I don't usually think of myself as a warrior, right? I think of those guys. And I'm guessing that you would say the same about yourself. unless like you're secretly a UFC fighter or you've enlisted in the military. But here's the thing, okay, we are all warriors, every single one of us. That is exactly what we're unpacking today. The reality is that we are in a spiritual battle pretty much all the time. And because of that, whether we realize it or not, we are all warriors. So we're going to Ephesians chapter 6. Okay, and Paul wrote this letter to the church of Ephesus, and it was meant to remind them and it was meant to remind us of who we are and who we are not, and what God has done for us in the past, and how we are called to live in this crazy culture we're in now. And whenever we get to the end of the letter, okay, Paul starts talking about war, and he's talking about a war that we can't see. Okay, it's not like a typical war. Like you can tell when a war's going on because you can hear gunshots, you can hear bombs. But this war, it is not fought with weapons. It's not fought with airplanes. It's not fought with lightsabers. It's not fought with X-wings. Okay, this war is different. Okay, this war is spiritual. And it's the most important battle that we are ever going to face because our eternity is on the line. So Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through 12. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So you are a warrior in a spiritual battle. So look at verse 12 again. Our war is not against flesh and blood. It's not against people. It's not against anything physical. It's against the rulers. It's against the authorities. It's against the powers of the dark world, and it's against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. And whenever we read this out loud, it almost sounds like the movie clip that we just watched. It sounds like a fiction movie. But that's not what it is. Okay, the battle Paul is talking about is very real. It plays out every single day, and most of the time we don't even see it. But I can promise you this, that everybody watching is going through a spiritual battle. So remember who you are, okay? You are a warrior. You are a warrior in a spiritual battle. But here's the good news, is that Jesus has already won that war. Okay, so we're going to look at 4 key parts of this spiritual battle. Things that you need to understand if you want to win. And I want you to really lock in on these. So number 1 is the enemy is real. All right, we see in verse 11, we see that our enemy is named. Okay, his name is the devil. But he also goes by other names. He's often called Satan. He's called Lucifer. He's called the evil one. He's called the father of lies. And whenever you think about the devil, you may picture like a little man in a red costume with a red pitchfork and a pointy red tail. Okay, but that could be nothing further but from the truth. And I want to show you how Scripture actually described him. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. And no wonder, for Satan himself massacres as an angel of light. It is not surprising then, and his servants also massacre as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve. Okay, let's see what Peter says about it. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Be alert and sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around you like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Okay, let me make this clear. All right, Satan is not a joke. Okay, he is not a myth. He's not a cartoon. He is not something that we want to play with. Like, you see all these shows, you see all this stuff downplay Satan. You see him, make him look harmless, but that's not the reality. Because a friend of the devil is someone who has rejected God. And listen, I know this sounds intense, but hear me. If you have given your life to Jesus, you have nothing to be afraid of. You have nothing to worry about because Jesus has already won that war. But at the same time, Satan is not someone that you should ignore or brush off because his goal is destruction. His goal is to seek and destroy anything God has done. He wants nothing more than to pull you away from God. We see that Satan is a liar. Okay, he whispers lies. He takes what God created for good and he twists it. He plants doubt and he tries to make you question God. And he is a master of deception. He's trying to convince you that God's best isn't really what is best for you. He tries to convince you that God's way is not the only way. And he tries to show you that, he tries to prove that God doesn't truly love you or care for you. We saw that he did it to Adam and Eve in the garden, and he is still doing the same thing to us today. He whispers those same twisted lies. He's real, and he's trying to disrupt God's work by going after God's people, which is us. Okay, number 2 is Satan's strategy is clear. Okay, at the end of verse 11, it talks about the strategies of the devil. And the strategy, what is that? That is a plan of action. But in this context, it's a strategy of how the enemy is trying to win the battle over us. And this is what it says in John chapter 8, verse 44. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding on to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. He's going to lie to you. Okay, that's simple. And he's going to make you think that this life is all about you, that God is holding out on you. He's going to look at ways to steal your purity by suggesting that you compromise everything that you believe in, that you compromise everything that you are trying to follow, or compromise your standards. He's going to try to destroy your relationships by encouraging you to fight with one another. Okay, number 3, we see that the battlefield is everywhere. All right, battlefields they're pretty obvious, okay? In a typical war, like I said earlier, there's guns, there's tanks, there's planes. The battlefield is obvious. There's usually smoke coming from it, and it's super loud. Most of the time, it's over a city, it's over a country, it's over an ocean, whatever it may be. But the battle is over a specific area. However, the battle that we are talking about right now, the battlefield is much bigger. The battlefield is everywhere. It's at your school. It's on your team. It's in your home. It's in your friend group. It's with the people that you date. And it's even here at church. No area is off limits, because this battle happens in your heart and it happens in your mind. It goes beyond even what our eyes can see. Okay, number 4, the stakes are high. So if you've ever played on a team, you know what I mean whenever I say the stakes are high. Okay, so maybe your team has been, your baseball team, we'll say a baseball team. Maybe your baseball team has been horrible for years, okay? And you actually have a pretty solid team this year. You may get to the state championship. You're in the championship game. All right, the series is tied, okay? And whoever wins this game walks away a state champion. All right, your team is down 1 point, bases are loaded, and the batter at the plate has a full count. If he walks, the person at third base comes in to score a run, they tie. If you hit the ball, you're potentially scoring 2 runs with a walk-off hit. Or if you strike out, the game is over. That is a high-stakes game. But we can also put it in the context of like school. So maybe you have a big test coming up. All right, you're like on that thin line of barely passing the test. You have like a 68 in that class. Okay, you need at least an 80 on this test to pass the class, and so you don't have to retake it. Okay, there's a lot on that test. Those are high-stakes situations. But if those stakes feel high in a game or on a test, imagine how much higher they are in a spiritual battle. Because we're not just talking about a game here. We're not talking about a test. What we are talking about is our eternity. Okay, we are talking about forever. Like imagine, if you lose this spiritual battle, you could be somewhere that you don't want to be forever, for eternity. And I want to leave you with a piece of encouragement and a challenge. So like, we read that we can resist the enemy and we can stand firm in our faith. And if we go back to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, it says, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Then in verse 11, it says, stand firm against all the schemes of the devil. Okay, that means in the middle of the battle, even when it's hard, we can stand firm. And then we go look at the next verse, verse 13, Ephesians 6:13. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day and have done all to stand firm. That right there is huge encouragement for us. We don't have to walk around defeated. We don't have to walk around hopeless or helpless. If you've put your trust in Jesus, remember who you are, because you are a warrior in a spiritual battle. And you can stand against the enemy. But as a warrior, you have to prepare for battle, right? You don't see Obi-Wan coming out in like flip-flops, a tank top, and shorts, right? He comes out with his armor on. He comes out with his lightsaber. He comes out with everything ready. But he's also training. He's also preparing. He is ready for battle. And the same is true for us. Okay, whenever we fight spiritual battles, we use something called spiritual armor. And that is what we are going through this season. In the next few verses, it shows us that the armor that God has given us. It shows us that it's already ours and we have access to it every single day, no matter what time it is. So Ephesians chapter 6, we're going to go through 14 through 18. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests with this in mind. Be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Okay, over the next few weeks, we are going to break down every single piece of this armor. So listen, I know this is heavy stuff. Okay, I said this earlier. It's scary. Okay, but you don't have to be scared because I'm telling you right now that Jesus has already won that war for us. It's not a competition. It's not even a fair fight, really, because Jesus already defeated Satan years ago on the cross. In Colossians chapter 2, verse 15, it says, "And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross." Like, listen, this is really good news because Jesus has already won that war. We don't have to live afraid. We just have to live in Jesus and rely on Jesus. And as soon as we give up on Jesus, that's whenever the devil can get into our lives. That's whenever the devil can come in, he can seek, and he can destroy everything that we believe in. That's whenever he starts whispering lies into us. But we don't have to walk defeated. We don't have to walk afraid because we serve the one true God who can defeat any enemy. At the cross, we've seen that Jesus overcame the power of sin. He overcame the power of death so that we could resist the enemy and that we could stand firm in our faith. So I encourage you to be here every week. Unfortunately, we had to do it online today, but God gave us technology so that we could do this. So I encourage you to be here the remainder of these weeks as we unwrap every single piece of this armor. And like, here's the truth. You may not think that you're fighting a spiritual battle now, but I promise you are. Another challenge I want you to do is I want you to memorize Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18. Okay, like that sounds like a lot, but you are more than capable of doing it. So remember who you are. Okay, you are a warrior in a spiritual battle. We saw that the enemy is real and his strategy is clear. We saw that the battlefield is literally everywhere and the stakes are really high. We do that by fighting spiritual battles with spiritual armor. And we are going to talk more about that in the upcoming weeks. Okay, we are warriors in a spiritual battle, but Jesus has already won the war.